Hey, what's up, guys? Jeff back again here. Today, I'm giving you a blast from the past. Quite literally, an old favorite of mine. This deck may have made me fall in love with Yu-Gi-Oh! This is going to be a quick draw plant deck from Edison format with some new twist on it because it has been about 10 years or so, maybe a little bit longer than that. Not sure, but let's just get right into it. Start. Got 2 Dandelion. Main card that provides most of your resources for your synchro plays. Great with quick draw. Great to search off Sangan. Even better with the Breeze Dragon going into Black Rose. The possibilities are limitless with Dandelion. It's very sad to see that this card is on the ban list, but I understand why it has its place on the ban list. To complement Dandelion, you have to have Lone Fire Blossom. Lone Fire Blossom also offers a lot of utility and a lot of plays. With the addition of Priority, this card is a powerhouse. Just being able to go into, say, a Tuner, which I do play, or even BU Titanial or Dandelion to control. One Titanial. This was always my favorite because just when you get it out, you know that your opponent's going to have a problem if they don't have Bottomless or Mirror Force or Torrential. These are the only cards that can easily deal with this card. And we play some cards to stop those cards to help block this game even further. It's similar to your Stardust, but it's just easier to get out with a Lone Fire Blossom. Very important except when it's in your hand. When it's in your hand, it's pretty troublesome. You try to get some tokens on the field and tribute summon for it. To continue the plant lineup, we have a Copy Plant. This is not something that I played when I was younger, mostly being afraid, I guess, that it wouldn't do much, similar to Titanial. But I now understand the value of this card, and man, the plays that you can set up with this in this format, being so restricted, it's very interesting. You should definitely check it out. It'll let you get into some nice synchros. Speaking of plants, this ties the theme of the deck together. So, for me, the hamsters and Raikos, which you'll see are not in this deck, are just a little bit too slow for my liking. So we go with the good old tomato. Now it is also a plant. Lets you combo up your Lone Fire plays a little bit further by accessing the tomato with its effect. And this card is dangerous for a couple of reasons, mostly Sangan. Be it there's no tour guide, the old school tour guide plants, but this is the closest thing that you have. It unfortunately has to be destroyed by battle, but there are ways around that. You can still make it go through. I really enjoy this card in this deck. Alright, now to keep the quick draw theme. Now, I have thought about even cutting this down to 1, because you really only need it when you have Dandelion. So you have to search one or the other off of the Sangan, which is where the tomato comes into play and connects the deck together. With that being said, effect is costly, and it does just put a lot of your plays on the board, so you don't have a lot left over, but if you're able to save up a couple cards, it's usually worth it. For the more synchro power, there's 2 Debris Dragons. Now, you can argue 3 of them, but I would suggest sticking to 2 because Pot of Avarice, you can just put it back, and in the first 2 turns of the game, it's usually pretty dead. But it is phenomenal with Black Rose Dragon, your main boss monster, in my opinion. Now, to continue on with the Mystic Tomato theme, we have the Sangan, of course. You need Sangan. He searches at least 60% of the deck, I'd say, roughly. Yeah, just in the right person's hands, Sangan is a force and a threat. The only deck that this deck really struggles with is Blackwings and Gladiator Beast, and it's because of the aggro aspect of those decks. If you can mitigate the aggro part of those decks, you can take control and play the game you want to play. To help speed up the deck a little bit, another Hindsight Edition, Armageddon Knight. It is fantastic with some of the trap cards we play. It can tutor out your Sangan too. but mostly we're playing it for Plague Spreader. Now, Plague Spreader isn't something that I played in the past either, but again, I'm trying out new things, and I want to be able to synchro summon as much as possible with this deck, having all the tokens around. And with Armageddon Knight, even though it's a little costly, it does give you easy access into Bryonic, which is a very powerful monster. Now, for meta purposes, we play 2 DD Crow. I find that there are very few hand traps in this format, it being such an old format, and this is one of them that is pretty high impact against almost every deck at some point or another in the game. If it's going to hurt me, then it probably is going to hurt my opponent, is typically the strategy that I have found to work. So I would definitely think about this. This is something that could be side deck though, but I like it in the main deck. This is the Dark Monster also. For additional support, there's a Card Trooper. He just fills the theme of what the deck wants to do, getting Dandelion in the graveyard, getting monsters in the graveyard. And he works pretty well with Debris Dragon. If you don't know, you can bring him back off Debris and still pay the cost. He won't gain the attack points, but that's just a nifty play to be able to do. So Card Trooper is very important. To round out the lineup, we have a Lion Darkness Dragon. You're going to want something to do with all those tokens and extra bodies that's not always synchro summoning, so I like Lion Darkness Dragon at 1. Some people have cut it completely, some people play 2. I think that 1 is like the correct number. You don't really need it all the time, but then the times where you can play it, it can lock up the game, similar to Titanium. It being 2 tributes is a bit of an issue, but you can work that around with the tokens. The tokens have to be in play for 1 turn before they can be used for a tribute summon. So that's why it's a little bit difficult sometimes, and you rather synchro. Caius, this is the powerhouse of the format. There's no debate for that. Regardless of what deck you're playing it in, this is like the miniature Dark Arm. It does everything you want it to do. And it's a Dark Monster. And speaking of Dark Monsters, we have Dark Arm. So yeah, you could just call this Dark Plants if you want, featuring the tomato and all these. So you have a good chunk of Dark Monsters. It's about, what's that, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, so you have 9 other Darks, plus, I'll just throw it out there now. There's 1 Trigodia for added defense. Trag is a good card because you like to hold your hand together in this deck until you get your combos to go off, so you can just summon this to apply pressure. And then, like I was saying, Dark Arm is it's a boss monster, and that's something that the plant deck has lacked, looking back on it. And it gives it some more aggressiveness against the Gladiator Beast and the Black Wings to be able to fight back. It is very easy to drop Dark Arm with this deck. As long as you see Lone Fire or Mystic Tomato, that's basically a 1-card Dark Arm. If they have a monster on the field, you can ram the tomatoes, that's 2 Darks, and then get Sangan or Armageddon Knight, whatever you prefer. And then if you have the Dark Arm, you can summon it. And then the most important part about this deck, you have Drill Warrior, so you can recycle Dark Arm. So it's a very good card to have. And most people don't expect it either. Alright, to continue on with some staple spells. Foolish, this just helps your Debris Dragon, helps your tokens, help fuel Dark Arm, need be. Heavy Storm, staple. You don't want to run it into Starlight Road if you can avoid it, but you just need to clear out the back row with this deck. MST, same idea as Heavy Storm, just not quite as good. It hits Oppression though, which is a huge problem for this deck. Especially losing the Raikos and the Hamster, you do have a little bit more of an issue with back row. So we're going to go with Cold Wave as well. Once you're already set up and don't need to use your spells or traps, you can just hit them with a Cold Wave, go into Black Rose. Really not much better plays than that in the game. Giant Trunade, it combos with some of the trap cards that we're playing. Now, it doesn't destroy the back row, but again, if it lets you set up like a Titanium or a Lion Darkness Dragon lock, it's very useful. You could also think about siding that. Now, you do have to run some defense, which is unfortunate because I would like to just play all combos in this deck, but it seems like the older decks are a little bit slower, and you have to have stuff for certain points of the game, so Book of Moon is a great tool to just have. It does a lot, and it can also force some of your stuff to go through. Now, the heart of the deck, in my opinion, similar to Drill Warrior, it lets you reuse your cards. Pot of Avarice. This is so good for multiple reasons. It helps the Dark Arm be live. It can just put back power cards that you mill, and it lets you reuse the engine, so there's nothing bad about this, except for the fact that your opponent can have DD Crow, and it targets. If they don't have the DD Crow, though, it's essentially Pot of Greed in this deck, if not better, because you're putting back monsters, which you can easily get to 5 monsters within 1 to 2 turns, and the game's slow enough that it will resolve. So, I love this card. I would not think about playing it at less than 3. Now, to get on to traps. So, to keep up with the defensive lineup, I do play 2 bottomless. There aren't any deep prisons in here right now, just because I feel like most of the things that I want to get rid of, I have to get rid of before they can attack. Mostly for the Blackwing matchup, but outside of that, you could think about siding this or put in something else that is more impactful after game 1. 1 Trenchel. This combos too well with your early game, with your Sangan setup, with your Card Trooper, your Dandelions. It is not good for you in the late game most of the time, but in the early game it's very useful. And you can do some cool trick plays with Stardust and block them from getting rid of your Stardust Dragon if they go after it by negating your own Trenchel. To deal with more of these heavy control decks, there's 1 copy of Dust Tornado. Similar to your MST, it's very good for Royal Oppression. This could be cut for more defense, but I like it, again, just to deal with those aggressive back row decks. For hand control, there's a Trap Duster. This card is pretty terrible going second, but in the right matchups, you just need to have it, and it gives you an unfair advantage if you go first, just having that knowledge. So I feel like it has a worthy spot in the deck. Okay, this is the gas part, the sauce, if you will. So of course everyone plays Call of the Haunted. Well, we took it a step further and added Limit Reverse. This not only lets you get access to that Sangan that you're going to get to early in the game, it lets you push even harder than your opponent would be prepared for most of the time with 1 Fire Blossom. And then if you need a tuner or a Dandelion, it can get that too. So unlike Call of the Haunted, it has a limit where you can only get monsters with 1,000 or less attack, but that's most of the important ones in the deck. And then Call of the Haunted can be saved for the more powerful, and they all these cards combo with Giant Churnade. You can reuse them off Giant Churnade if they don't destroy themselves. And then last but not least, for some more defense, we have just 2 Starlight Road and a Solemn Judgment. I don't really like playing Starlight Road, but like I keep bringing up, the Blackwing matchup is a huge issue for this deck. So you have to have ways to be able to defend against the Blackwing deck. Starlight Road is great against any kind of board wipe, like Heavy Storm, Icarus Attack, Geysaris. It just, when it does resolve, it's going to probably win you the game. There's not a whole lot that can stop it, besides like Solemn or Stardust Dragon. Or, interestingly, if they destroy the card that you're trying to destroy. I believe that's how it was ruled, that Starlight Road won't resolve then. And then Solemn is just MVP. You try to save this once you have a board set up. You don't want to use it in the early game if you don't have to. It just locks the game up for you. I do not have a side deck made right now because I haven't been playing much of this format. So do with that what you will. You need stuff that can stop anti-meta and mostly Blackwing Gladiator Beast in my opinion. But I'll just get into my extra deck real quick. Catastor. This comes up because of you're playing the copied plant. So stars. You could think about playing Army Arm too. I have needed him at times, depending on like the levels and stuff. But Catastor seemed like it would be more relevant to me. For 6s, we have Iron Chain, Bryonic, and Turbo, as well as 2 Drill Warriors. Now, usually you want to play Goyo Guardian, but I had to make room for the Iron Chain Dragon. I'm sure you could probably cut this Turbo Warrior. I don't make him a whole lot, but he's nice as an option. The 2 Drill Warriors is essential because they can get rid of... I don't really remember back in the day, them getting rid of my Drill Warrior that much, but it seems more often than not my Drill Warrior gets handled nowadays. And Iron Chain is just important, of course, for Debris Dragon and tokens and stuff like that. You can't make Brionic, so Brionic is mostly here for the Armageddon Knight. Nitro Warrior. Nitro Warrior is useful for going for OTKs. He doesn't come up that often. This is another thing that you could possibly cut for Goryo Guardian or Armor Arm, but it's just nice to have more options with your quick draw, because there's going to be a lot of tokens. Ancient Fairy Dragon. This helps you extend your play